Hey guys, it's Justine here from I Should Read That, and today I am going to bring you my June book haul. So there's going to be a significant number of books missing from this book haul because I have already done my 30th birthday book haul, which was massive and I don't want to do again. So if you want to see that video, I will link it below. So most of these books are going to be books that were sent to me by the publishers. I was very, very fortunate this month and I got so many books. So many books were sent to me and I am so incredibly grateful. So I'm going to start off with books that I bought for myself this month because I only bought 2. Aren't you proud of me? So I went to Waterstones in Oxford for Joanne Harris's event for the Testament of Loki, and it was wonderful and amazing. I went with Judith from Chain Interaction, who's a fellow blogger and does amazing book reviews, and one of my friends from work, and we had a spectacular time. Although I already own a couple of Joanne Harris's books, I ended up buying 2 more. So I got Chocolat and Runelight. So to start off, Chocolat is indeed the book that inspired the film with Johnny Depp, who, although he is a trash can, we did not know he was a trash can at the time, and I loved that movie so much. I had no idea until recently that it was based on a book. So Chocolat is about a woman named Vianne who sort of comes into this small French village and opens up a chocolate shop just across the street from the church, and this ends up changing the dynamics of the village for good. Like I said, I love this movie, but I haven't seen it in absolute ages, so I don't really remember what happens. I'm very much looking forward to this. I think it's going to be wonderful, and it'll be really nice to read one of her books that's not one of her Norse mythology books. Those are the only ones that I've read so far. Next we have Runelight, which is the second book in the Rune Marks trilogy. So I own Rune Marks, which is the first book in this series, and it's right there behind my camera. It's part of my Yelp TBR. So this is actually the second book. I ended up buying the second book without reading the first book because I love the Gospel of Loki and the Testament of Loki so much. I haven't read the back of this because I don't want to spoil myself for the first book in the series, but these books are kind of interwoven with the Gospel and Testament of Loki. I believe these take place not in a modern time, it's still sort of way back when, but it is after the time of the gods. The series follows a young girl named Maddie, and she is born with a rune mark on her wrist, and this is a sign of magic, and she's kind of shunned because of it. I'm really looking forward to reading these books. I love the Gospel of Loki and the Testament of Loki, as I've said a million times before. You guys all know that, and I really want to read this other series and see how they kind of intertwine with each other. Right, so those are the books that I bought for myself this month. So next up we have books from publishers. The first book that I have to show you is Bodacious the Shepherd Cat, and this is a charming tale of an extraordinary cat. This is by Susanna Crampton. So I actually started reading this book and I ended up setting it aside because it's not quite to my taste, but I do think that it's a very sort of cute and very sweet book told from the perspective of this cat who lives in Kilkenny in Ireland and is a shepherd. He's a shepherd cat, exactly as it says. This book kind of chronicles his life when he was sort of found as a kitten. He was living in a novelty toilet seat shop, which is very silly, and it sort of tells his story and what he does on this farm. He has an outrageously large social media following, and he also has a website, which I really liked. I think I enjoyed those more than I enjoyed the book, and I think that it just came down to personal taste. This wasn't necessarily for me, but it was very, very sweet. Next up we have Notes on a Nervous Planet by Matt Haig, and I've already talked about this one in my June wrap-up because I read this in the month of June. I really loved it. I really enjoyed it. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. If you want to see a little bit more, then you can go ahead and check out that video. I will link it below. Another book that I received last month that I also read last month is Shattermoon by Dominic Dooley. This is a debut sci-fi novel, and it was super, super fun. I've already talked about this in my June wrap-up. Again, that'll be linked below. The last book that I received and read in the month of June is Ravencry by Ed McDonald. This is the sequel to Blackwing, which is one of my favorite books of last year, and it was possibly even better than the first. I can't say much about this because it is a sequel and it's going to spoil the first one, so just go ahead and read Blackwing because it was fantastic. Next, I have 2 of my current reads. So this first one is Adrift, and this is by Rob Bofford. This is very gripping and is going to probably make me incredibly anxious. I'm about 50 pages in so far, and I'm really enjoying it. This book takes place well into the future. It's 21 something or another, and there is a space station that has basically been turned into a luxury hotel. It's got views of the Horsehead Nebula, which is probably the most popular of the tourist destinations in this area, and the space station has regular tours to the Horsehead Nebula. While they're out having a look at the Horsehead Nebula on one of these tours, the space station is blown up by a mysterious ship and everyone dies except for the people on this small ship. There's no food, there's no water, tensions are running high, and I am very, very anxious, but it's so good so far. So next up is probably one of my most anticipated reads of the year, and I am so so happy and so grateful that I came home from holiday and had this waiting on my doorstep. This is Spinning Silver by Naomi Novik. Oh, I'm so excited that I've got this book. I'm already about halfway through and I'm really, really loving it. Spinning Silver is the second sort of long-form adult fantasy tale from Naomi Novik. Uprooted was her first book and it is fantastic and I love it so, so, so much. It's a book that I'm very grateful for because it got me out of one of the biggest reading slumps of my life. I was really, really struggling when I was in grad school getting my master's. I picked up Uprooted after having not picked up a book for like 5 months and just blasted through it in a single night, and it cured my reading slump. It was amazing. So keep that in mind when I say that I think Spinning Silver is even better than Uprooted, although I am, again, only halfway through, so we'll see how it goes. Spinning Silver is kind of basically a retelling of Rumpelstiltskin, which is not one of the sexier fairy tales, so you don't get to see these retellings very often. So I think it's really interesting that that was the one she chose. It is essentially about a young woman named Miriam, and she is the moneylender's daughter. Her father is the world's worst moneylender in that he keeps lending out money and not bringing it back. So one day Miriam just gets completely fed up with this. Her family is dirt poor, not respected in the community, and her mother is dying. It's the middle of winter, so she decides to take up her father's business. She is so good at this business, and she is so good at sort of making money and generating money that it is boasted that she can turn silver into gold, and this captures the attention of the Staryat king. I am probably not saying Staryat correctly, but I can't pronounce that word at all. There are other storylines that interweave with Miriam's story, but I really feel like hers is the most important. It's the core tale in this book. I am like loving this book so much, and I think that obviously Naomi Novik is very good at this sort of fairy tale retelling. She's very good at the long form, novel length adult fairy tale. But I think that it's really the characters in this book that really make it shine. Haha. Miriam is an amazing, amazing character, as well as Irina and Wanda and the other women in this story. The women really carry this story, and they are like the definition of bitches get stuff done. I love it so much. So next up, I have The Light Between Us, and this is by Katie Kahn. I was so excited to hear that she was writing another book because Hold Back the Stars is another one of my favorite books of 2017. I just absolutely love that book so much, and this is her next book. It comes out in August. I'm intentionally leaving this one a little bit of a mystery. I don't know a whole lot about it, but I know it's about time travel and second chances and romance, but she writes amazing and really interesting romances, and I cannot wait. It is set in Oxford. I live in Oxford, and it's just going to be fantastic. I'm so excited for this book. So the next book is one that I've been hearing amazing things about, and I cannot wait to read it. This is Summerland, and this is by Hanu Rajanemi. So Summerland is a sort of alternate history. It takes place in 1938 after the British Empire has expanded its reach into a place called Summerland, which is a metropolis for the recently deceased. So of course the Soviet Union is also trying to sort of get its hooks into Summerland, and this book has to do with spies. So I am very, very excited. It feels like it's going to tick a lot of my boxes. Again, I'm hearing amazing things about this. I think that this is going to be a really, really good one. People are already calling it a new sci-fi classic. The next book that I have here is The Condorhorn Experimentations, and this is by Rob Grant and Andrew Marshall. Rob Grant was one of the writers on Red Dwarf, which is a very popular British sci-fi TV show that was very silly. So this book, I believe, was adapted from a radio show here in the UK. I think it was maybe Radio 3? I'm not sure. I'm really bad with radio. I apologize. So it says here, during the current restoration of the Palace of Westminster, certain documents and artifacts were discovered, hidden in a bricked-up alcove behind the mechanisms in the clock tower popularly known as Big Ben. They were quickly dismissed as a hoax, and a rather pointless and unconvincing one at that. For reasons far too circuitous to elaborate, the material eventually found its way to us. There were dozens of volumes of badly scrawled personal journals and various sketchpads and notebooks crammed with strange inventions and astonishing designs, together with some extraordinarily curious devices, for purposes of which have not yet been established. Intrigued, we plowed through everything, and the results of that research are here in these pages. If it is a hoax, it's a very elaborate and clever one that is impossible to disprove. This book looks really, really fun. I feel like you just don't get much from that description, and I love that so much. I have a feeling this is going to be a very fun read, possibly a very silly read, so we'll see how it goes. Next up is the Fairy Loot book for the month. So this is Grace and Fury, and this is by Tracy Banghart. This is a sort of fantasy dystopia, which I think is very cool. So this book features two sisters, Serena and Nomi, and they are in very different situations and they have very different fates. So Serena is in the palace and she has been training all her life to become a Grace, which is a woman who is selected to stand by the heir of the throne as a shining example of the perfect woman, which sounds quite hellish. However, Nomi is a very headstrong and rebellious young woman, and she has a dangerous secret, and one wrong move could cost both sisters everything. So this sounds like a very, very intriguing book. I've heard a little bit about it so far, but I don't think I've seen any reviews. So I'm very much looking forward to this, and I love the fact that this is a hardback. Next up is a book that I'm very, very excited for. This is The Mermaid by Christina Henry. I read Lost Boy last year, and I really, really enjoyed it. That was sort of a new take on Peter Pan. So this sounds like it's going to be sort of a retelling of The Little Mermaid, but I'm not 100% sure. Instead, it sounds like it's going to be a sort of fantasy origin story for the Fiji mermaid. So the Fiji mermaid was, I believe, a monkey's head that was attached to a fish's body, and it was sort of paraded around the country as an actual mermaid. In this story, there is an actual mermaid, and unfortunately for her, P.T. Barnum finds out that she sort of exists in a small fishing village, and he comes into her story. I'm really hoping that this book features what I imagine would be a much more faithful depiction of P.T. Barnum than we got in The Greatest Showman, which is a movie I have not seen because I personally boycotted it because P.T. Barnum was a trash can of a human being. He was a very, very, very bad man. So I'm hoping that we get more of his sort of villainous side in this book rather than a happy, musically nonsense version. Next up, I have Retribution Road, and this is by Anton Varenne. So this is a historical fiction book that seems like it is quite complicated and combines a lot of things that I love. So this book follows a character named Arthur Bowman, who is a sergeant in the East India Company, and he is sent on a secret mission into Burma that ends in the capture of his men and a lot of deaths. Consumed by his alcoholism and his guilt, he ends up discovering the body of a man in the London sewer who appears to have the same kind of torments and tortures that his men suffered in Burma. So he ends up going on the hunt for a killer. I don't know much about it. It looks incredibly cool. I believe it's a translated book. Yes, so it's translated from French by Sam Taylor. This looks really fun. It looks like it's going to be a really fast-paced read. I am very much looking forward to this. Next up, we have a thriller. So this is Where the Missing Go, and this is by Emma Rowley. So this book really, really captured my interest, especially after reading The Woman in the Window and being a little bit disappointed by it. I really have this craving for a good thriller, so I was very intrigued by this book. This book follows a woman named Kate, and she is a volunteer for the missing persons hotline. So she essentially speaks to people who want to run away from home, who have run away from home, and she very rarely gets prank calls, but one day she gets a call from a woman named Sophie, and she doesn't know what to think because Sophie is her daughter who has disappeared many years ago. This sounds very, very intriguing. I think that it's going to be really fun. It's going to be a really great read, and I don't know what to expect, but I'm very much looking forward to it. The next book that I have is a new book by one of my favorite authors. This is Redemption's Blade by Adrian Tchaikovsky. This is the first book in his new series called After the War. So this book is all about a world that has been devastated by a figure called the Kinslayer and his armies. There's been this huge war, and now the war is over because a group of heroes ended up defeating the Kinslayer. So this book follows a woman named Celestine, who's one of the heroes that defeated him, and as she's kind of trying to untangle things after the war has ended, she realizes that things might not be as tied up as she thought, and the Kinslayer may still be around. I just found out that Adrian Tchaikovsky was writing another fantasy book, and I got very excited, and I jumped right on it. I can't wait to read this. I think that he's a really, really great author, and I like his female characters a lot, so this should be a really good one. The very last book that I have to show you is a classic. This is Orlando by Virginia Woolf. This book was originally published in 1928, and it is a classic LGBTQ book. It follows a beautiful young man named Orlando who is a member of Queen Elizabeth I's court. One morning he wakes up in the body of a woman in the 18th century. So not only is it kind of a weird time travel novel, but it also deals with gender identity and gender politics. This looks really intriguing. I'm very much looking forward to this. I have read one Virginia Woolf book before, and that was Mrs. Dalloway in university, and I really, really enjoyed that. I have never gotten around to reading any of her other books, so why not start now? That is it for my book haul for this month, not including the birthday books, which again you can watch below. So I have a lot of new books in the flat, but I also read a lot of books this month. I am going to try No by July until Yelp comes around. We'll see how that goes. I don't think it's going to go very well, but I am trying. So comment below and let me know if you have read any of these books, or if you picked up any really great books in the month of July, or if you have any recommendations for where I should start, because there's a lot of stuff here. I post bookish content to this channel fairly frequently, so make sure you hit subscribe, check back soon, and I will see you next time.